Hello YouTube. Tamriel is full of mythical and mysterious fantasy creatures, from gigantic monsters in the deep seas to daedric unicorns to the tiny yet awesome dragon frog. Now, I have talked at length about a lot of these creatures in the past, but one creature that I haven't properly talked about yet is the Nereid, which is essentially Elder Scrolls' version of a mermaid. Their tale is an interesting one, so let's immediately start talking about them. So, Nereids, also called water sprites or water nymphs, are mystical creatures that live near bodies of water that they are linked to and will protect. They look a bit like female elves, but with blue, turquoise, scaly skin, full lips, blue eyes and fin-like ears. Some sources describe them as too beautiful for mortal eyes, and as we'll talk about later, some mortals tend to fall in love with Nereids, mirroring mermaid legends in our own universe. Now, Nereids function a bit like Spriggans, because just like how Spriggans tend to protect and take care of wooded groves and their wildlife, Nereids will do the same to ponds, springs and lagoons. They seem to prefer non-contaminated and flowing water, and generally they will not be aggressive to mortals unless they see them as a threat to the health of the ecosystem that they protect. Some Nereids, however, seem to be always aggressive to mortals, which I suppose could come from the fact that they see mortals in general as a threat to their ecosystems, considering what mortals generally tend to do to ecosystems, you know, chop down trees, contaminate the water, that kind of thing. Because of this, some communities have negative legends about the Nereids, saying that they are simply vengeful spirits born from the bodies of women who were murdered and whose body was thrown into the water, while other communities have far more positive legends about the Nereids. Because the Nereids are apparently quite intelligent creatures and are able to learn mortal languages with some effort. We know that they are quite advanced in magic, having mastery over the strange and mysterious form of magic called water magic, which gives them control over the water and its properties. They can use simple water to heal creatures, which has led to communities forming around the ponds of good-natured Nereids, where people come to the Nereid to be healed from their ailments, and in some cases mortals can even start to venerate the Nereids for their power. But unlike other quite intelligent creatures, they don't really seem to build anything themselves or craft anything. They are known to adorn themselves in shells and surround themselves in water as some form of clothes with their water magic, but they don't seem to produce anything themselves. They do, however, use things that are left behind by mortals. For example, we know that Nereids are quite fond of mortal jewelry, silver in particular. And they are known to inhabit the ruins of the houses of Tamriel's mortals if those ruins are close to their bodies of water. That being said, it seems like the Nereids are both fine to live by themselves and in groups. When they live in groups, they often live under a matriarch who leads the group, which is often called an Empress Nereid, but they also seem perfectly fine to live by themselves, especially when the body of water they are linked to is quite small. But this also has a negative side, as the smaller their pond is, the more vulnerable the Nereid is. As I touched upon earlier in the video, Nereids are linked to their body of water, and when I say linked, I mean that quite literally. Because if the water becomes poisoned or contaminated, the Nereid can die or become mentally corrupted. A good example is that during the Knaten flu, one of Tamriel's worst diseases, a video on that is in the description if you want to see it, people sought out Nereids for a cure. However, there's an example of a Nereid curing so many people that the water of her pond became completely contaminated, as sick people entered her water and slowly degraded its quality with their presence. This made the good-natured Nereid who wanted to cure them lose her mind and eventually become corrupted, leading her to become a vengeful creature looking to inflict and kill mortals as she became contaminated with the plague herself. The only way to then purify the pond would have been to kill the Nereid, as the corrupted Nereid no longer sought to nurture the water but rather sought it to keep it in its contaminated state. Pretty grim stuff, to be honest. Now, when used responsibly, their control over water is astonishing. While some Nereids will wear mortal clothes, according to the lore most tend to prefer staying naked and shroud themselves in water instead, making sort of water clothed. Although we don't see this in the games, where for obvious reasons they have shell bras and tattered robes. That being said, they are perceived by the people of Tamriel to be quite attractive, and they often sing an angelic transfixing song which can intoxicate mortals and is apparently especially intoxicating to men. One common trope can be how a man is seduced and then enthralled by the Nereids' call, not dissimilar to mermaid legends in our own world. The funny thing is though that in the poem where we learn this, it actually said that the Nereids don't really care for mortal men, and rather the men are just entranced by their song, but they don't want anything to do with the men. Now, we don't know the origins of the Nereids, whether they are mortal, immortal, who created them, we have no idea. We don't even know how they procreate. Obviously some have speculated that they procreate with mortals, but that doesn't seem to be true. But considering some races view them as spirits and they are not dissimilar to Spriggans in their behavior, I think just like the Spriggans, their true origin will remain a bit of a mystery to us, although it's possible that they are a type of fairy. But it's quite clear that they are basically a replacement for Daggerfall's nymph creature, as they share some characteristics, and the concept of a nymph, basically a magical naked woman, has become a bit outdated and boring compared to the other creatures that we now have in the Elder Scrolls universe. So I personally welcome that change, but you know, there aren't really a one-for-one replacement, as the nymph has some unique and interesting lore itself. More about that in my video on nymphs, which is in the description. Now, that's basically all that we know about the Nereids, and I certainly hope that you learned something. And if you did, I hope you will consider subscribing and return for the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Now, if you want to know more about other aspects of the Elder Scrolls lore, I recommend watching some of the videos that I mentioned briefly in this video, like my video on the Canathan Flu, my video on sea monsters of Tamriel, or a video on a creature kinda similar to the Nereid, Black Marsh's Swamp Giant, which also seems to be a protector of nature but on a whole different scale. Links to those videos are in the description if you want to watch them. Now, all that remains for me to be done now is to thank my top Patreon supporters, Mr. Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Polarized Putin, Athena Hyodis, Volkjor of Argonia, King Chris, Bulge, Scrap of the Scrolls, Doji, Fenrir, Sword of Bushido, Rakai, Sarmikal, and Mr. Christmas. It's thanks to these people and all the others on screen that this channel stays alive, and for that I'm very grateful. That said, I hope to see all of you in the next Elder Scrolls lore video. Bye bye.